Hello there. We're here today with Mary Schiller, Sue Pankowicz, Sheila Massand, and Mary Schiller on a very brief, again, taster for the upcoming Viva event in Spain 2018. And we invited Mary Schiller to come and be a guest speaker for us this year. One of the things that we've noticed about Mary, and many people say this, is that she seems to have a talent, it looks like a talent to me, for creating prolifically. I don't know if that's the right word, but she's an action taker. She seems to just be constantly creating and producing, and there's products, there's programs. I turn around, the next email comes through, and she's on to the next thing and on to the next thing. And never mind all the books that she's written. I can't remember, at least 8, I think, are out there. So, you know, we thought creativity, brilliant topic for Mary, and something that we've decided that she'll be talking to and about at the actual Viva event. So we want to give you just maybe 10 minutes or something of, some of Mary's insights around creativity. So I'm just going to hand the mic to you, Mary, and let you take it away.
Thank you, Sheila. And, feel free to interrupt me to ask questions too. Thanks, Sheila and Sue. Creativity is just such a buzzword topic, it seems like, in our culture. I think that as we get older, it seems to look more and more regimented. It seems to be categorized. When we're little kids, you just kind of accept that kids are creative, right? You give them a piece of paper and a crayon and they go to it. Or you give them some other thing like some clay and they just make something, like when I was little, one of the things I loved to do was just make up stories. So I would just start talking and I would just make up stories. And I was recently around my niece's daughter, who is 9. And I hadn't been around a child that age in a while. And it was just so wonderful to see her creativity on display constantly. For example, we went to the Tower of London, and she'd never been to London before, and she'd never seen anything like the Tower of London. And she came out of there, and afterwards we were eating lunch or dinner, I forgot. And she drew a picture on a napkin, just with a napkin and a pencil, of somebody on a horse, like jousting. And then she had all these other horses in the background, and we're like, what's that? And she says, it's the horse wars, and they're all wearing their armor, and she just had created this whole world on a napkin, and it was such a beautiful display of her taking in what she'd seen and then creating something else from that. And it reminded me of the fact that doesn't go anywhere just because we get older. That never changes. That creativity is innate. And it isn't just about drawing or storytelling or writing and anything that we would determine as creative. It applies across the board, that simply being human seems to be a creative act to me. And I didn't really see this very clearly for myself until about 3 years ago when I was working with a coach myself. And I was telling her that I seemed to be missing some creative abilities in certain areas of life. And she said, well, can you give me an example of an area? And I said, well, frankly, money is an area where I just really don't feel like I'm creative at all. I don't really understand how money works. I've never really earned as much money as I would like to. It just seems very opaque to me. I don't understand it at all. And basically she said to me, well, what if you're wrong about that? what if, she was kind of blunt about it. She's like, what if you're wrong, Mary? What if you actually are creative in the area of money? And I said, well, my life doesn't really bear that out. If you look at my past experience, doesn't really seem to suggest that. And what she explained to me on that call and over a series of calls was something really profound, which is that creativity is not segmented. It's in us and it is us. and it's present in anything and everything all the time. And the way to sort of experience that is to basically ask for it, and it's there. So over a little while, I started to experiment with that related to money. And I was like, what if I actually am creative in this area? And I've just never explored it. What would happen if I did? And I was pleasantly surprised by the fact that simply catching a glimpse of that truth, that creativity applies everywhere, had a significant impact on my ability to earn money. And it didn't take any work. It was simply that I started listening to creative inspiration in that area and acted on it. And it's just been a brilliant example of how something can look a certain way, but that doesn't mean that that actually is how it is. She and I also spent quite a bit of time exploring how this innate creativity is evident just in everyday life, and how when we go through the day, we're making creative decisions all the time. It doesn't look that way to us, but that's what's happening. From getting up in the morning and deciding what we're going to make for breakfast, that's a creative act, to, deciding how we're going to run our day, that's another creative act. And we talked about the fact that human beings in our physical form are constantly being created and recreated. And so when I started to see that in actuality, I was simply part of this larger creative system, it started to look more and more to me like I could utilize that in any way I consciously wanted to. And that's been a really, really exciting thing to explore and kind of recognize that really nothing is cut off from us in a creative sense, that it's all available and it's all simply part of being human. So, I think one of the things that I have heard from clients over the last couple of years is things like, I don't really feel like I'm in the flow, or feel like I'm creatively stuck, or I'm kind of blocked here. And now that language seems really foreign to me, because if you think about it, how could we ever be out of the flow? Like, what would that even look like? Because if we're in this thing called life, this creative force called life, and we're kind of in that all the time, there's nowhere for us to go. we can't somehow separate ourselves from that. It might look momentarily like we're not there because maybe we're watching a funny movie in our heads about it, but in actuality, we're always in the flow. We can't not be there. That would be like saying that the trees aren't in the flow or something. I'm no different from the trees outside. I'm the same, in that I'm in this same creative system that they're in. And so I think once we catch a small glimpse of that truth, it helps us to continue even when it looks like we're out of the flow. So referring to what you said about my seeming ability to create a lot of things, it's because even when I have the sense that I'm not really in a creative mood, I don't really care anymore. I just go forth anyway, because I know what the truth is. And the truth isn't a story about a limitation that I might be listening to. The truth is that I'm always in the flow and I can access that creativity anytime. And so I just, I don't really listen to that stuff anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's made a big difference. Things don't take as much time to create. They don't take nearly as much effort. More and more of the time when I'm like writing a book, for example, it has this sensation of taking dictation rather than having to, conjure something up. So it makes life a lot easier when you can see this a little bit.
I think it's a fabulous topic to be exploring. And in a way, I mean, the link for me with Viva especially is that we didn't take one aspect of the human called the learning thing and say, right, we'll create something where they can go and learn. We thought, let's take whole human beings. What do they enjoy? And so that playful aspect, I think, we like to think that that's that's a really important part of what happens for those 3 days. Well, it's 3 days that are, you know, closed in the Viva event, but so it's interesting listening to you. I was thinking, yeah, because I remember Sheila was saying a long time ago, when we were right in the early stages, she kept seeing the picture of a playground. So, you know, it's not they're not separate things within a playground. You can do all those different things, and they're kind of like, you just choose and you move around, and so that's fabulous.
Yeah, that's how creativity looks to me, pretty much like what you just described, where it's available in anything that you want to explore. It's just simply there. It's inherent in it. It can't not be there. So if for a while I want to go create music, I can go do that. If I want to create some wonderful coaching things, I can create that. If I want to focus on creating some money, I can do that. And it's kind of, everything's sort of equal, if that makes sense. Nothing is really ever cut off from us, creatively speaking. I also feel like if we're looking at what the human experience actually is, and this is sort of a big statement, but this seems like what it is. It's creating. That seems like what we are about. Like, I can't picture what else we are doing other than creating. We're creating an experience. We're creating forms. You know, new ideas are coming to us all the time. That's another part of this creative force. And it seems like that we're sort of the embodiment of what is really going on here, for lack of a better way of saying it.
That's beautiful. It feels to me like it's a very big picture that you're painting for us, and I keep hearing the word potential. So the potential and the creativity. It's all because there's nothing is static, is it? Nothing is fixed. It's constantly moving. So that in itself, for me, says that we have to be creative. And I'm a bit like you. Not like you, but something was said. I think it was to Dick and Bettinger a few years ago. So I actually said, I'm just not creative. I'm just not. And his answer to me was, well, how could that be so when you are creating your reality moment to moment to moment to moment? That really did something for me. That woke me up into seeing things in a different way. However, I can still feel there's some belief there that I'm not particularly great at creating.
Yeah, and I don't think you're alone there, though. You know, I think that's a very prevalent aspect of the sort of normal conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're not an artist, quote unquote, if you're not a musician or whatever, if you're not doing something in a creative field, that means that you're not creative. Well, that's just not true, because your creativity is innate. There's nothing, you can't get away from it. And it's being expressed constantly in every single thing that you do. So that I have found very freeing, because it just takes away any and all thought of limitation when you see it that way. And as he said to you, you know, what else could you be? Yeah. If you're not creative, what else could you be? You can't, there isn't anything else.
Beautiful. We're looking at the time and trying to stick to we'll only do 10 to 15 minutes. But again, there'll be a lot more of this at Viva, and this is a conversation that I could keep on exploring, definitely. I know it's a passion of yours too, Mary. Yeah. So we're really looking forward to having you here for the first time at Viva.
Yeah, thank you. That'll be great.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And thank you for your time today, and look forward to seeing you in November.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Bye everybody for now.
Bye.